So happy Friday. Welcome to our bi-weekly Eastside Wrap meeting where we discuss impacts of homelessness in the east side of Santa Barbara. Today we'll be primarily focused on a conditional use permit presentation from Path Shelter. They offer this presentation once every quarter during this meeting. So we'll give Liz and her team a chance to share for a good chunk of the meeting. I do have a couple of general announcements before we get started. So I'm going to share my screen for that. All right. So just a couple of dates coming up. Next Thursday, there will be a Path Community Cleanup. I'm sure that Liz and her team will talk about this, but I do have the slide here and the QR code, and there may be another link that they can drop in the chat window as well. And then our group will be meeting again on Friday the 4th, because we meet every other week. So it'll be 10 a.m. on Friday the 4th. And if you can't believe that it's April already, you're not alone. I did want to make sure everybody's aware. We had a really great turnout last week for the launch of our South County strategic plan to reduce homelessness. So SB Act is working with a lot of partners. The city of Santa Barbara is one of the founding partners for this coalition, alongside the cities of Goleta and Carpinteria now, since we've expanded to South County. And we've got lots of nonprofit agencies, government agencies, philanthropic partners, business partners that have all been working together to create this strategic plan and enact it. I'm just going to mention it briefly, but I'll put the link so you can read the full plan at your leisure. But we have four different goals focused on kind of the whole spectrum of ways you address homelessness. Starting with goal number one is really about prevention, trying to help people who are like at imminent risk of homelessness to prevent them from becoming homeless. Goal number two is something that I think is really pertinent for these East Side calls. We're trying to create a list of the top 100 individuals with significant mental health and substance use needs. And our goal is that over the next 3 years, we'll get more than half of them off the streets and into either interim or permanent housing. So we know these are the individuals that, when we have these calls, these are the people that we're often talking about from week to week. They're some of the most visible in our community. They're also some of the most vulnerable. And so if we can get 55 out of 100 of these folks off the streets, I think we're all going to notice a pretty significant impact in the community. Goal number three is that we're trying to uh, uh, reduce the number of people who become homeless again once they get housed, because it is tough. Once you get housed, there's a lot of kind of stabilizing that needs to happen. So we're trying to increase the number of people that are able to stay. And then goal number four is just to sort of change public perceptions around homelessness. We know that if we want to sort of get community buy-in for the things that we need to do to end homelessness, we have to really help bring the whole community along and honestly respond to what they are seeing. And so our goal is to try and improve attitudes and understandings. So that's the general 4-year plan. Like I said, I'll put the link in the chat window about with just more details about these goals and how we're hoping to achieve them. Liz and several others on this call have been involved in creating these, so just grateful for everybody partnering together. But I'm hopeful that we can make some big dents in homelessness over the next 3 years. Lastly, just wanted to mention it is still warming center season until March 31st. And so we have had the warming centers open a couple of nights since there was rain, mostly last week. The Path also has their own beds that open up whenever there's inclement weather. And so I'm sure their team can talk a little bit more about that when they're giving their presentation. But just wanted to mention this. If you're not already in the loop, it's a good way to just stay informed if you just call the hotline or you can email them to find out whether it's open on any given night. It's pretty safe to assume they're not going to be open for a little while yet. It looks like the weather forecast is pretty good for the next week or so. All right, so with that, we are going to stop with the general announcements and I'm going to turn it over to the Path team for their presentation. Um, and I think you should be able to share now, Liz, but let me know if not. And you're muted, Liz.
Trying to find all the buttons.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not used to Zoom anymore. Now we're a Teams organization. Okay. Okay. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Perfect. Oh. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Adams. I'm the regional director here at PATH in Santa Barbara. I wanted to start with just a little bit of the organizational history. So we're located here at 816 Cacique. We originally, well, actually before Casa Esperanza, even, but we can't, okay, let me back up. So Casa Esperanza started here in 1998 to fill a community need, and operated a shelter as well as a kind of a soup kitchen, a community kitchen. Then in 2015, Casa Esperanza was in a place where they could no longer, they were in a place where they were no longer going to be able to operate. Because PATH is one of the largest and most impactful homeless service providers in the state of California, we were contacted and asked, could we come in and help keep this shelter open? It was created because of a community need. There was a large homeless population on the east side in this neighborhood, is why the shelter was originally built or not moved in here to this building. And so PATH said, yes, we'll come in and we'll help keep the shelter open. And so we've done that. And now we've been here 10 years this year, since 2015. Hold on, it's not moving now. So what PATH does through creative collaboration, strategic leadership, empowerment for all, and passionate commitment, we work to end homelessness for individuals, families, and communities with the vision of a world one day where every person has a home. Here locally, we pride ourselves on being person-centered, promoting well-being, providing spaces that promote health and happiness, service, accountability, and integrity. In order to operate here, we have to meet all of these conditions of our conditional use permit. The conditional use permit was originally approved in 1999 for Casa Esperanza to operate here as a homeless shelter. We then inherited this conditional use permit as when we came in 2015, and continue to meet all of the conditions that are identified through this permit. Every other year, we present to the Planning Commission to show them all of the ways that we're meeting the conditions identified in the permit. It's very important to us, so we always ensure that we're meeting those conditions, and we actually go above and beyond what is required of us under this conditional use permit, and have grown a lot through the 10 years that we've been here. Our presentation is coming up this spring. We're still waiting on our final date, but we'll let everybody know when we have that date. Everybody is always invited to those conversations to provide your input, feedback, and comments for those meetings as well. So you can see here the conditions that we are required to meet. Some of them were met upon construction. We have to have water flow, there are landscaping conditions, water rights, RV storage. We do not permit parking or storage of RVs either on site here or in our overflow parking lot down the street. There are maximum numbers of staff that we can have, so we're currently within that number of staff and volunteers that we can be at. We have parking spaces both here on site, right in front of the facility, as well as down Cacique that we share with Marburg. Thank you. Oh, wait, is Susie still on the call? Thank you, Marburg. Yes. Thank you, Susie, for sharing that space with us, that parking lot. We used to, when it was Casa Esperanza, they served meals. Like in that first picture, you can see there's like a long line of people hanging out kind of in our parking lot. They used to provide meals to anybody. We now only provide meals to people who are PATH program participants. So the number of meals served has greatly reduced, but we can serve up to 200 lunches daily. We currently operate only up to 100 beds though, so only up to 100 meals served. We do serve 3 meals per day though, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But again, it's only to people who are in the shelter. During inclement weather, we serve people who are here on our inclement weather beds as well. With the emergency shelter, we open 22 beds anytime there's inclement weather. We are not one of the like technical warming centers, so we have a little bit of flexibility in when we open our beds. So if we know it's going to be cold or really windy, if rain, we'll open up those beds. And then anybody who comes into our into our winter shelter, inclement weather beds, is able to stay here kind of for the duration of that inclement weather. So if it's predicted that it's going to rain, for 3 days, people can stay here during that time. They don't have to leave during the day and then come back. They can stay here on site, access our access points and our outreach team and case management, meals, and all of the services that are provided on site here while they're here. And then we used to have a detox program, which we no longer have. Instead, we coordinate and collaborate with detox facilities and programs and help our program participants connect to those programs that are off-site. We provide bike parking on site so that all of our guests who stay in our interim housing can have their bikes parked on site here. They are required to register their bikes with us when they come in, so that we know whose bike belongs to who. And then we are able to bring in people onto beds that are referred by the police department. We contract with the city of Santa Barbara for 12 beds at the facility. And so that can be referred by the police department or the street outreach teams, really anybody at the city, within the city, can refer people onto those city beds. So thank you, City of Santa Barbara, for that. Lighting, tree protection, those are all conditions that we met upon completion of construction. The transit, we work with them to provide bus passes. We have bus routes posted so that anybody who stays here can easily learn bus schedules. Our case managers also work with people who are here to help them know how to access bus passes, how to get free bus passes. We have bus tokens on site that people can get from us to go to and from appointments. We help people learn how to figure out the schedules on their own. Sometimes we go and ride the bus with people to help them as they're learning how to take public transportation as well. So some of the ways that we go kind of above and beyond what's required here. Neighborhood communication, we are required under the conditional use permit to communicate with the community, do outreach to the community, do neighborhood watch. And so the neighborhood communication, SB Act, thank you for you kind of coordinate, you do coordinate that for us to help us meet this condition of our conditional use permit. So we attend all of the Eastside RAP meetings. We do these presentations for the neighborhood communication. We send out emails. We distribute flyers for these meetings as well to get to really encourage our neighborhood, our neighbors to join these conversations. Neighborhood outreach. We actually have a street outreach team that we'll talk a little bit more about later that goes throughout the east side over here, the Milpas corridor and the Cacique area right near the facility to check in with businesses, our neighbors, as well as people experiencing homelessness and residents to just see like, how are things going? How can we be a better neighbor? What else can we do? And really how we can support. We also have added into this beyond our street outreach team. Our leadership team also goes out monthly to check in with businesses, distribute flyers, pass out bathrooms at path signs if they want them to hang at their facility to send people to the path bathrooms, and really just kind of check in and again, see how are we doing? How can we be better? Over just the 2 years that I've been here, we've seen great improvement. The last time we went to check in with neighbors, we actually heard a lot of really positive feedback that they have seen a lot of improvement recently and have not had recent issues with people experiencing homelessness and their businesses. So that has been wonderful to hear. And then Neighborhood Watch, this is also kind of connected to our street outreach team. We're out there often walking around the neighborhood, just seeing what's going on, encouraging people to come inside, go to the Faro Center, connect with services, come into our access point, or whatever we can help support folks with. We also do a monthly community cleanup. It's no longer always on the third Saturday. We've added some flexibility there based on just kind of what we've seen. So sometimes we do it on Saturday and sometimes we do it on weekdays. So our next one is coming up on Thursday. The flyer that Landon shared, and it's an opportunity for volunteers, neighbors to come and just walk around and help clean up in the neighborhood. We're required to maintain the facility. We have on-site maintenance, as well as we, bring in contractors when we need to for support with maintenance. And then we're also required to report to the Planning Commission, which I mentioned is coming up any month now. And this is just, again, these are the actual like documents that are included in our conditional use permit. So this is kind of a continuation of that and some of the ways that we have shown and that the Planning Commission has agreed we are in compliance with our conditional use permit. So I already mentioned that SB Act is serving as the stand-in to facilitate the neighborhood meetings. And that's something that the Planning Commission has identified. They want that to continue. It's going well for all of us to come together in this manner. You can see here in number 4, the month or the presentations that are required. It's required to give a monthly presentation, and so that's when we're joining we do more than that, right? Because we do this larger presentation quarterly, and then every other week we present at the ERAP meetings as well. And so those are all of the conditions that are included in our conditional use permit. And so this originally was just for the interim housing site to operate out of this facility. Since PATH has been here, we've, like I mentioned earlier, we've grown a lot, we've expanded a lot, and we've gone above and beyond what's included in and required of our conditional use permit in many ways. So some of the other programs and services that we now provide out of this facility is that um, we have an access point up front. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with homeless services, an access point is kind of anybody's first stop to come to being able to connect with homeless services. You can go to an access point and do an intake. You get entered into the database that is shared by all homeless service providers throughout the county. And then that allows you to be able to access homeless services throughout the county. So we operate an access point on site here. We also have a public health office on site here. So anybody can come in off of the street and access public health services in the front of our facility here. And then our front desk also serves as a navigation center. So often people will come in off the street and they're trying to figure out where to go. So our front desk helps connect them and helps them navigate to where they should go next, or helps connect them to other services they might need. We also operate a grocery rescue program. We partner with the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County to reduce food waste in our county. We pick up food from local grocery stores, which we then use in our own kitchen, as well as distributed into the homes of our program participants who are housed. And then we also redistribute back out into the community. When we have extra food, we bring it to the Faro Center. We distribute it to Veggie Rescue, to CityNet, to various housing facilities. And each month we distribute around 5,000 pounds of food. We also have a volunteer program. Volunteers support in many ways, putting together hygiene kits that then go out with our street outreach team, hygiene supplies that are used in our interim housing site. They support in our kitchen. We have this year over 1,500 volunteer hours already. For anybody who wants to volunteer, there's an email address that folks can reach out. I always continue to hear what an incredible experience it is to volunteer, especially in our kitchen, and get to really interact with the folks who are here on site, staying in our interim housing. And then Oscar, I'll let you talk about our street outreach program. And just the street outreach program is kind of connected, stems from some of those requirements of our conditional use permit as well, that we realize, the best way to do a lot of this neighborhood work and communication is by having a full street outreach program. And so we implemented this street outreach program again to really go above and beyond what's required of that conditional use permit to really meet the needs of the community. And Oscar, who will jump in, oversees our street outreach program.
Thank you, Liz. Happy Friday. My name is Oscar Soto. I'm Associate Director of Housing Programs. And one of the programs that I oversee is the street outreach. Part of the street outreach is building relationships with businesses, participants, housing, getting them off the streets into a shelter, residential, sober living, services with navigation, whether it's how do we get you to Department of Social Service, how do we get you to apply for food stamps, so just navigation services. Annually we enroll around 80 people. Approximately 44% of those enrolled have a positive exit, whether it's permanent interim housing, skilled nursing facilities, inpatient substance abuse. The 44% of enrollment, positive enrollment, is one of the highest in the county. We do provide a mobile access point at the rescue mission every Wednesday, 8:30 to 10:30. We do our regular engaging with people that are unhoused on the streets on Casica and Milpas corridor. We also offer transportation, the Bay Yao Foundation outreach van with Lyft and supplies. So if anybody needs to again, go to Department of Social Service, DMV, doctor's appointments. We do offer transportation. Currently, there's a team of 2, and we are waiting for a third member as well.
Thank you. And then our interim housing program, the shelter that originally operated here, we provide 3 meals per day, case management, up to 100 people can stay here at a time. We are currently Santa Barbara's only low barrier shelter. And so what that means, and I'll back up a little bit, all of PATH's programs are what's called Housing First, Low Barrier, and Harm Reduction. And PATH, that's one of the reasons that PATH has become one of the largest and most impactful homeless service providers in the state, is because all of their programs are operated that way. And these have now become really the industry standards and best practices to operate as housing first, low barrier, and harm reduction. What that means is that we try to get people inside as quickly as possible. That's the housing first piece of it. The low barrier piece is that we try to have the lowest barriers to people accessing services. So in order to come into interim housing, there aren't a lot of requirements. You're not required to participate in programming, to be accessing mental health, to be taking your medication, things like that. You're able to bring your pet with you. Oftentimes people won't come inside if they can't bring their pet, because that's like their family member, right? So they're not going to leave them outside. So that's the low barrier piece. We try to have as few barriers as possible. We also know that people are going to be more successful in accessing housing if they are accessing mental health support, if it's needed, obviously. But if they are participating in program, if they're accessing mental health support, if they're taking their medication, they're doing all of these things, we know they're going to be more successful. So we work with each individual, meeting them where they're at to meet their own individual goals and helping them reduce the amount of harm that they're doing to themselves. So working with them to start taking their medication, to access that mental health support. We have Be Well actually on site here so that we can connect people relatively easily to mental health support. We provide intensive case management. We have case managers on site here who are working daily with every person who's in our interim housing program to help connect them to those services, to help connect them to the detox when they're ready, or those types of things. We remind people daily to take their medication and things like that. And we don't, so we serve anybody and everybody, no matter their history or where they're at. And we serve, what that means is that we end up serving the highest needs individuals, many of whom cannot be served by any other service provider in Santa Barbara, because we are the only true low barrier facility and service provider in Santa Barbara. So many of the people who are in our interim housing program would otherwise be on the street because they literally have nowhere else to go. So annually, we currently serve over 300 people, with approximately 10% of them having positive exits. You heard Oscar mention earlier in our street outreach program, with that highest street outreach program outcomes, that like 40% positive exits. These aren't, they're not the same. So when we're looking at a street outreach program, when we're looking at positive exits for street outreach programs, those are getting people off of the street and into various types of housing. So it could be like into a treatment program or something like that. When we're looking at interim housing positive exits, it's a different threshold. And so when somebody exits from our interim housing and goes into a treatment facility or into a medical facility for somebody who's a higher needs, that does not count as a positive exit. The only thing that counts as a positive exit for interim housing is if they're moving into like a permanent home, an apartment or a house or something like that. So I just wanted to mention that for those of you who are not entrenched in homeless services. Most people don't know those differences of what we're talking about when we're talking about those positive exits. In addition to the beds that we operate every day, 24/7, 365, we also operate more than 300 additional beds during inclement weather. When we finish off this season of inclement weather beds, I would guess that number is going to be even higher because we've had a lot of inclement weather beds here. And then we are always working, again, back to our values. We're always working to improve our facility, to better promote well-being for folks who are here and really create spaces for people to heal, because essentially that's our number one goal, is to help people heal so that they can then start to access the services and supports that they really need to be successful as they transition back out into the community.
We partnered with Santa Barbara City College for a rapid rehousing program, Pathways Home. It was launched in partnership with City College. The HOME acronym stands for Housing Opportunities Through Mentoring and Education. The population that we serve are students experiencing homelessness or those at risk of becoming homeless. The current enrollment is we have 7 students and we are supporting 10 children. The permanent supportive housing, PSH, one of the qualifications, well, a few of the qualifications is you have to be homeless for more than a year, multiple HUD qualifying disabilities. Part of the services that we provide is housing navigation, security deposits, long-term rental assistance, intensive case management. Currently, we have 44 individuals and families stable in their home with a 94% retention rate.
Thank you, Oscar. So that's a summary of our programs, our conditional use permit, what we do to meet those conditions. I forgot to say at the beginning to ask questions throughout, so I want to make sure we have time to answer any questions that you have about our programs or any of the conditions of our conditional use permit.
Mayor Rouse.
Yeah, hi Liz. Had a quick question. You mentioned the 300 beds provided during inclement weather. Is that cumulative over the year?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
all right.
Other questions for the PATH team? Not seeing any at the moment. Well, thank you. So we'll look forward to hearing from you all when you go before the Planning Commission next, or when you'll be reporting to the city. But as usual, we will continue these quarterly reports through the Eastside RAP meeting. So the next one will be sometime in June of this year. So thank you all. Go ahead, Miros.
Yeah, hi, just a quick comment. I appreciate the report out, and it's good to have that timely information, especially as you go before planning commission. But you talked about your fourth goal of community engagement and community acceptance of what we're doing, the homeless programs. All that's really important. But one other thing that we have to bear in mind, whatever program we're doing, whether it's at Path or whether it's Faro or wherever we are, we have to bear in mind that the surrounding community is really important to satisfy. And it may not be, the problems may not be clients that are yours, that may be vandals that aren't even homeless. It may be a lot of things. But that constant presence, constant vigilance, engaging with PD, which has been fabulous in that corridor, but also with our service providers at CityNet. I think it's really important that the community sees us proactively doing that. And I say, well, those aren't, that's somebody else. They don't think that's somebody else. They think if you have a facility, it becomes an attractive a nuisance, at least in their mind. So we've got some challenges right now in Chapala Street that we're dealing with right at the moment. You know, you're obviously very aware of the stuff going on around Cacique and Path. So not dismissing those things, and I'm not saying anybody's dismissing them, but keep bearing that in mind because as we go forward, we want to either expand programs, do more things like dignity moves, or keep the funding going, which who knows what's going to happen with the feds and CBDG and all that kind of stuff. You're going to have the community really understand that we're out there, we're proactive, and we're visible. Uniform people, whether it's a path uniform, far outreach, CityNet, whoever it is, they got to say, okay, at least somebody's watching. And we don't always have that's. I'm just getting texts while we are having this meeting about the other perspective. And I know we're all out there trying, but I think it's really important just to bear that in mind if you want to get to that fourth goal. It's not about the homeless people, it's about what we are doing. This is a very compassionate community. We have no problems there. I'm convinced of that. Our problem is, do they think our pro action is effective? And are we still putting the hammer down when it comes to being out there, being visible, and engaging with these folks on the street? I think that's really our most important thing that we can do.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Rouse. That's one of the reasons I think that it was so exciting for us when we were out doing one of our recent check-ins with the business neighbors and heard so much positive feedback about the improvements that people have seen. We do distribute as well. We have our community resource flyer that has our phone number and email address there. So we make sure that neighbors are aware too, like we're always here and we're always available to support when issues do arise. We can be called, texted, emailed at any time, and we'll get somebody out there as well as, you know, we try to have somebody out there as often as possible. We can't have 24 hours a day, but at least.
One final comment, if I may, see my buddy Al just pop up on a screen down there. Suggest we made it one time is about doing some kind of a perimeter barrier around the courtyard at Path, which I think would be good. You've already mentioned limiting the open feeding program to just, you know, clients, members that you have. I think that's so important so that people aren't, you don't have that in and out. There's a control there. And I think that would be a great improvement. And I will be your advocate for that if you guys can we come to a consensus and say that's what we need to do. Because I think everybody would say, yes, we're, you know, you're at Path, we've got your name, we've got a program, we've identified you. The same kind of thing we're trying to do at Faro right now. And I think that's essential to the success and the community further acceptance of what we're doing.
Thank you. I do appreciate the acknowledgement. Just the community perceptions are really going to be an important piece in winning over the community to actually helping address these issues. Yeah, that's why it's one of our strategic plan goals. All right. Um, all right, so let's go ahead and open it up for community members to raise questions or concerns just around the East Side in general. Barbara Anderson wasn't able to join us today. I see Andrew, you were able to jump on the call. Thank you. But we do have some updates about the safe parking program we can share a little later. But let's go ahead and open it up first.
Yeah, I've got a quick one. The guy I mentioned the last time I was on the call that's under the underpass on Milpas, still there. Lots more stuff accumulating. So and it just looks very ragtag.
That's the individual you texted me the photo of a little while ago, Natasha.
Uh, I
I
don't
can
know.
I
I send you so many, Landon.
It's true. I'll find that text and then I'll reply to it and see if that's the same individual.
Okay, I'll check real quick.
And then also too, I just want to respond to your point about perceptions, Natasha, too. I do, yeah, when we're talking about perceptions, I want to make it clear what we're not saying is that perceptions are always wrong. We definitely know that there are significant issues that happen in the community. But in general, we have to help create a better community perception, and some of that will be actually responding to the very real felt issues. So yeah, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we're just trying to fix everybody's wrong opinions about this issue. That's not at all what we want to communicate. And I see Liz put the outreach contact information for Path in the chat. Any other community questions or concerns?
Landon, I just wanted to share some feedback that I'm getting from some of our staff. I know I've been working with um, Sergeant Beltran and Andrew. We've quarantina continues to be a concern. We've noticed an individual dumping his toilet tank into the gutter in front of our building. And we're also, impacted severely by the oversized campers, and it's making it very difficult for our employees to park. So I don't know I think you mentioned you have an update on that. So that would be great to share so I can get some feedback back to the team.
Did you? So,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
Susie, would you be able to, do you have a picture description of the person who you've seen doing the dumping? I'd love to get Oscar and his team to see if they know the person and or have any connection, or if we can kind of check in with the person.
Yeah, I'll get with the supervisor. They're definitely um, monitoring the situation. We also had a couple situations this week where the campers were blocking the ABOP driveway entrance. So I think Sergeant Beltran's team was called and they moved quickly. But again, these are just, because we have such a big quadrant, um, whatever information you can provide to me, it'd be helpful to get back to the team. Thank you.
So, Susie, I'm looking at this communication with Barbara. It may be something that she had already sent to you because she mentioned she had a conversation with you recently, but I'll go ahead and share. So, the difficult news is we're continuing to focus code enforcement and law enforcement resources on the region. The city attorney's office and public works are dealing with significant workloads, which has delayed movement on new parking regulations, but we're continuing to issue warnings and citations for violations as appropriate. The good news is I think everyone on this call is aware of the large $8 million grant given to our county to address vehicular homelessness. And so Barbara says that they received good news that the state actually approved the request from Santa Barbara to add that Quarantina region to that project. So that means that they'll be able to target the vehicular encampments there, send more outreach and services on a much more regular basis since they have that funding source dedicated. So I had mentioned last time I wanted to get safe parking on one of these calls. I'll see if I can get them on April 4th so they can share sort of what they're starting to do in that neighborhood as well. See also, Barbara, last thing was mentioned that there is an individual that owns 5 vehicles in that area. So they'll be working with law enforcement on how to best address the illegal activity. So I'm not sure if any of that was new, but that's the update.
And just for the group, Landon, if I could just give a quick update kind of on top of what Barbara's saying in terms of vehicular stuff. I had already just emailed back and forth with Susie about this, but for the group, from the code enforcement side, we continue to be aware of those underpasses. constantly, they're a constant point of attraction, or they draw in a lot of activity, but especially with the rainstorms we've been having, we just see a lot more impact there. Since it seems like we made our way out of that kind of storm time when we try to be a little bit more compassionate and understand that people are seeking shelter under those. Now we're starting our power washing program up again, which will be addressing those specific underpasses. So it'll be the Quarantina, Cesar Chavez, Cacique, and Milpas underpasses. So on Tuesdays and Fridays, those will have a litter pickup followed by a power washing service, which will help to, control and hopefully mitigate some of the impacts of the RVs, and then also the individuals, whatever remains are left on the sidewalk there. So, and that is on top of the regular cleaning litter pickups that we do on additional days during the week, just for those areas. So, in terms of encampments, we continue to address those at the underpasses on a case by case basis, because they are different from just a litter and cleanup of the sidewalk. But we are, starting to really try to tackle those underpasses and get kind of a clean slate going there.
Thank you, Andrew. Anything else from the community? Natasha, you mentioned under Cesar Chavez, Calle Cesar Chavez. Are you talking about the underpass there?
Yeah, I am. I think people are dumping from their RVs there, and the litter that's accumulated on the other side of the fence is really bad. There's a smell. It's a little scary.
And when you say the other side of the fence, you mean the fence that abuts up to that underpass, or?
So there's the fence right up against the sidewalk. So when I say other side of the fence, I mean the side that you can't get to from the sidewalk unless you
Okay,
climb over.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can address that as well. So we do those fences, it's a Caltrans fence there. So we are in communication with Caltrans. We're also going to start to try to work those side corridors, which are heavily impacted as well, just in that whole zone, basically from Milpas, connecting each kind of underpass area. So really going to try to get the sidewalk back in good shape, work with Caltrans, then we can get behind the fence, address the litter back there, and then hopefully just take away some of the draw of the hiding spots that are kind of tucked in behind the fence there.
Thank you, Andrew. Anything else from the community? Otherwise, we'll go to providers for updates. All right, seeing none, can we start with our CityNet team?
Good morning. John and Olivia are out today, so I'll be giving most of the updates. They continue to do their outreach on the east side and on State Street and check in with businesses, averaging from 15 to 20 businesses a week. During last week when it was rainy weather, we focused on Cacique underpasses, Dwight Murphy, Pershing, waterfront areas, trying to get people into warming centers and getting them into the path rain beds as well. On Wednesday of this week, we took out our women's van to Dwight Murphy Field, connected with about 7 individuals, and gave them information about the Faro Center, as well as our contact information. And we're just continuing to try to get people to engage in services. And what else? I feel like I'm missing something. We checked out the area yesterday behind Chase Palm Park where the tracks are, where we've seen kind of it become a hangout spot. There's been, at least yesterday, we didn't bump into that many people, but everyone that we connected to, we referred out to Faro Center, and we made sure to pass along our information as well. So yeah, that's about it for us.
Thank you, Alondra. Let's go to the path team if you have any other updates you want to share.
Happy Friday again. We still continue to engage with individuals on the streets. Last week we did a lot of getting them serviced into the warming centers as well as rain beds. One of the things that we are doing is once we get somebody into a rain bed or we refer them here, we try to see if they're connected with the provider services, try to get them engaged as well with the Path Street outreach. And then just continuing to, do our walks and just checking in with businesses and client, on-house individuals outside.
Thank you,
And
Oscar.
I'll add also, we just finalized some new contracts and we'll be opening some additional beds. So we'll be having a couple of beds dedicated specifically for street outreach. We'll have a couple beds dedicated specifically to students, SBCC students who are experiencing homelessness. We'll have a couple dedicated to people who are exiting, being released from jail, working with the sheriff's department for people to be able to come on to those specified beds. And we also have some medical specific beds that are, I think, as of today, the contracts have been finalized and we'll be able to accept people onto those beds. So we're excited about that.
That's great. Thank you, Liz. All right, Andrew or the code enforcement team.
Yeah, thanks, Landon. Beyond sort of the, underpasses and some additional attention there just because of the impacts from the rainstorms we've had come through, a lot of our work continues to be along the train track areas. Just for CityNet, I know that area behind Chase Pond Park was kind of a hot spot. We actually have seen a lot of movement of those individuals going further east. So they've started to make their way down past Milpas on the tracks and down closer towards the bird refuge. So they're in a spot between the bird refuge and the train tracks there. So just for future reference on that one, that continues to be a hot spot along with some of the areas along the creeks that we check in with regularly. We are still we will see it in encampment, and we have a few individuals that are challenging in their locations, and we do clean, and they're quick to return. But we're staying on it and doing our best to get them linked up with outreach and resources as best as we can. So feel like we're gonna make some good progress here with the power washing and start to see some positive change there. Just in conjunction with that with the safe parking program, hopefully we'll see those underpasses less impacted. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. And then Sergeant Beltran, the updates from the CAT team.
Yeah, just like Andrew was saying, reemphasize too that we're aware of all the underpasses. We're out there. Sometimes it's felt, sometimes it isn't, just because there's only so many of us and we have to be at other places too. But we are addressing it the best we can. The other update is next Wednesday we're going to have two officers starting on bikes. They're not actually CAT officers, but they're going to be working very closely with the CAT team. They'll be assigned to downtown, waterfront, and the lower east side and west side areas. Their primary function is basically just kind of like a community concern type thing. So any types of ongoing complaints that come in, we kind of funnel those to them and then let them handle those. And they're going to be working different hours than the CAT team, because the CAT team primarily works during the day. This team is actually going to be working at late afternoon, evening hours. So hopefully their presence will be felt, hopefully, and they can make some differences since it's a change in hours. They're not dedicated solely to patrol, and they'll be able to address some of the community concerns that are happening after hours versus just during the daytime. And that's about it from our update.
I think related to that, thank you, was Mayor Rouse's comment about people being able to contact CityNet as kind of a first tool, like if it's a non-emergency situation. I'm trying to pull up the CityNet outreach number, but if someone from the CityNet team has it before me, if you want to throw it in the chat, that'd be great. But that is available on evenings and weekends, Thursday through Sunday. And then also, Sergeant Beltran, there was a question in the chat just about parking enforcement by the post office on Cacique. I don't know if you have any comments on that at the moment.
Yeah, like is that the RVs and stuff by Nopalitos? Is that kind of generally? I don't if that's the that whole general area, Quarantina, Nopalitos, all the RV parking. I think it was kind of mentioned earlier. I think Barbara would probably have a better update on that. I haven't been in the conversations involved regarding that, but I know that they're working on solutions. But I think that some of that has to do with the city attorney, and I don't know where they're necessarily at. I know those processes aren't immediate, so it's probably going its course. But on our side, we're just going through and trying to do whatever we can on any type of enforcement action that we can address for the time being until there's a longer term solution for some of these things.
And we also our street outreach, we check in with people who are living in vehicles as well. So we check in with people who are in the RVs. There are many teams working on that. We're all aware of it. Unfortunately, it's just been really challenging to really make a big impact there. We do check in, we coordinate and collaborate with New Beginnings. We always are working closely with CityNet as well as parking and police department and everybody. So we're all definitely aware and doing everything we can to check in with those folks and help get them moved and connected to services or into safe parking programs and things like that as well. And just a little plug, if anybody knows of parking lots that would want to provide parking for RVs for a safe parking program, please let Landon know.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Liz. One of the issues is that a lot of times people have jobs or they have reasons why they need to be in that particular neighborhood. So we need to find safe parking lots that are generally in that area if we want them to be incentivizing for people. It is 11 a.m., so if there's anyone that needs to hop off, please feel free. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. But and then we'll make sure and
Thank you
share
all.
some of these
Appreciate
other
it.
comments out. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, everyone.
I think we've heard from everybody. Yeah, no more community members in the call. So I'll share that photo that Natasha had sent of the Milpas underpass. I
I
can
have
send that
to
to.
jump to another meeting too, but Oscar, are you able to stay? And then can you is Tom still with you? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.
Thank you, Liz.
Oh, I was muted. Oh, he left. Yeah.
Here, for those of you who have time. So this was the original photo that Natasha had shared a few weeks ago. She's not sure if it's the same guy still, but this is under the Milpas underpass.
It might be the same because I was walking by there on Wednesday or yesterday, and he looked familiar. He looks familiar, so it might be the same person.
Yeah, I can't recognize him. And I know I've recently been over there with the team and I didn't see him. I know there was multiple Spanish speakers that we would run into down there on the Milpas portion of the underpass. Um, but I'll follow up with my team to see if they're familiar with him. And like I said, we will be out in the area if you guys need any additional support, Oscar.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, always. Okay. All right, y'all. I'm about to jump off if there's anything else.
No, you're all good. I think we can go ahead and